Good morning, Gen Rinpoche. Tashidale. Good morning again.
Oh yeah, also.
And good morning, Katrina. And welcome to people online. The preliminary prayers, the link for the preliminary prayers is in the chat box. To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, the oneness gone, foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, no other world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, to you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When I was supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paid 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, and I bow. With pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner and the best, supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to you I bow. Great, compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop, a dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the foe of false, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, Portland, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kapnirya. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create, by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
다 닉성겐라.
어야, 뭐야, 다들. 미초 도와 칼로 줄자봐. 군줄 치와 줘봐. 대신시 원부 시시 니시실라 그냥이 숙버들로 차차로. 어야, 다 가서라. 당원도 스쿨로 줘야 돼. 남주는 시집 버리시라. 가서라. 세대 르도 메네바. 지배 최전치 sonda 교화치마 내가 말을 교화치마 신로고 대인들 교화치마 내송의 교화 teleke 마키와체 플라다미 교화실랑네 아니 쳔델이야 김바츠든 서바 삼델라 소발이 창바티 공도 빼게 땡실이야 아니 라다미 땡카루실이 개바샤고요삼 어디에체도 대다이케베큐 심지어시알라 룡아 예수님 있고네 심지어시알라 소아빵 진리지 페버트바 최대 자고요 삼네 그로치 세더로 대한다 하다 미교와대야 동해지랑 시체에 년둘 때에 교상부이나야 실 동해지랑 시체 밀라야 교가 나실라 속바로 살아야 동해 라마일에 동해 참만 내다 녀무 배상하지인데 라라 라마베바 키션에 dor고 바신베 거에 동해에 땐도 타로 같이 제고요삼 기분 된게 삼을 기요라 전에때 라치부 거에 동해에 타오라 삼기 되게 말해삼 소소체데 파마니엔데게 쩨베 심제때서 토마메바나 탄다바도 동해지 나르마오바나 두스땡게 들이야 samlumata che rachi butare samlutana rung mare samne roa ende chede pama chabe kyo ngamati ngamala soba pama nyendele soba simje kande chena raga nyende da roa rala pendo ba ma juba mebe samne tende samlutana teda tamje tunga de trawa cheto ba che chego sam de agasura Rada drawa nye tu churbata majuba kayero. Rada drawa tewa dola tunge meduba shechi imbe. Rangi tunge se kubata tewa trukuba shendo shenje tunge se wata. Tewa trubala ya rangi be tumge. Simche kandichi ina tezul pento tumge ge. Kyo kuse yende kundengi kibushi kiwa cha asam. 대체도 사제제 고바 토고도 삼타르부 삼로다 로자침부 삼로다 대체도 텐데림 길로베 전달이야 롭생게테네 최도도 사제 숨바데 냥기 삼네 콜로세담데 셈바르쇼스야
So here, as per usual, before we start the teachings, we should set our motivation, set our intention. And so we should think that here, this life that we have right now is something that is subject to destruction. And we don't just become nothing after this life, but we have to take a rebirth. So thinking about this, thinking about the kind of contemplation for the being of small capacity, we recognize that we have to take a rebirth in the future. And we want to avoid the kind of suffering rebirth. And instead take a birth as a human or a god, wherein we have the kind of basis to be able to develop and continue our practices of generosity and ethics and patience and meditative concentration and so forth. And so for that purpose, to be able to get that kind of birth, we're going to abandon any kind of harm toward other sentient beings by our three doors, our body, speech, and mind. And as much as we are able, try to help other sentient beings. So taking up those practices for that purpose is the being of small capacities kind of intention. But thinking beyond that, we recognize that even if we take a birth as a human or a god, it's still in the nature of suffering. It's better in comparison to the lower realms, but we still are subject to the sufferings of birth, aging, sickness, and death, and having to cast off our aggregates and take rebirth without any kind of control. And so at this point, developing the kind of attitude of a being of middling capacity, we generate the desire to gain a definite freedom from that cycle of suffering, of samsara. But when we get to that point, thinking then that to just strive after our own liberation alone is really not okay. Looking at the kind of beings like the mothers and fathers, those beings that we love in this life, to leave them in that kind of suffering situation and just strive after our own freedom is not suitable. And not only are there those that have been kind to us and loving towards us in this life, when we think about past lives and the lives before that, there's not a single being who hasn't acted toward us with kindness and love. And so in that way, we think I need to get all of these suffering sentient beings out of that kind of cycle of suffering, and recognizing too that every being is just like us in wanting to have happiness and not wanting to suffer. But we need to strive to gain a kind of state, become a kind of being who can actually benefit all of those types of beings by developing all good qualities and eliminating all faults, gaining the state of perfect, complete enlightenment. We then are able to benefit those suffering sentient beings. And so this kind of thinking requires us to think long term, to have a kind of vast aspiration. And with that kind of aspiration, we should set our motivation, thinking that I am going to listen to the teachings of the Buddha Dharma, in order to train my mind in stages, in order to be able to achieve that state of Buddhahood.
Oh, yeah. Tanga to cause left at the teleba. I have to check. Oh, yeah, did that. Oh, yeah, I did that. Oh, I'm going to match it in ba. Oh, Tanga to the Tenditeliaco. Tenetapa, tension depression, I said, Telia. Couldn't kill a tension depression like you are. Remember, I can you turn it to Basse? Oh, Tendishanda, your lesson. Did it. Shebula tension, did what? Oh, the Shebabo dan Leda, Noble Lama Shebersha said, Penner Rimbuda Tongu said, Judan Jawake Marwa. In a Juletenico Maracasa, Rimbuletene Tongu Shagura. Kamba Chembuletene Chunjusha, Kamba Chunjul in a Kamba Chembushagura. Rimbuda Tongu Chembuda Chunju said to the turn to be or Desera. Tezukanga Chishin 30 troopers in a Judan Rebuke Marwa. Rimbuda Tongu Parida Tsurisera. Ripajo said, Sosutesed Tsurisera. Pajo de Parisera, Paruletene Tsuri, Tsuretene Parisha. Riparida Tsurinid, Chuparida Tsurisera. The Shajota Lojo, Nocho said, Chichil Tony Shamado. Sharsho said, touch it to Kayo Mardo. So Shada unit, Shandachil to the Shani, Sharshori, Shandachil to the Nobre Rura, Shandachil to the Charter Rura, Sidan Kavashi Remado, touch it to Sharsho, Gaduina Sharsho in Gigi Mardo. What to do this? Taganashi, Le Chebabo, Shebabo, and let the Lama Shebers. Shebabo de Jawa de Shagura. Shinso as a Shinso Abu in body, Shinso Sune, Soala Todeni, Shinso Abu Chagra. Shinso Abu Judan, Shinso as, Shin Jebabo Jione, Jeje Shings, Jeje Shingione, Jebabos, or Tezo Chichil Tony Shaguramato, Rawando Trubachi or Maresavara. Chebabo da Leda Gangobo Lama Sheber Chas, or teacher Shiben Deborah, Sise Kapsu. Lobin Dawa Drabakira, Uma Chise, Chise Kazu. Shiro Chanam Jese, Leda Chebabo, Da Nyawa Lanja, Da Nyawa Lembapo, Le Tadepe Ngobo, Shen Kanya, Shen Kanda, Keche Da, Roapo Da, Tache Da, Senyi Da Cheshi Da, Jora Karsura, Jora Jawa Da. Chora Chebada. Descendo Yalada Yalacha, Yendenda Yendenche, Semada Shechala Sobe, ngobu maluba ngobu maluba tada leda chebabu number chebe ngoni ki yoba ka de penju tene tuba ni ba shebar chaose tata de tama de sawashira chebaboda leda ngobu lama shebar chas di dreba lobe dawa draba chise ka sungdwa shirab chen namje solodo da deba namje 제바보다 냐와 제바보다 레니디 펜주 뚜뚜레사 풍불랑자다 레바보니데 펜주 뚜뚜레사 와 뭐보신 간다 계제 예배 전에 계제 샤고로 계제 교대 레벨에 또 레벨이 깨기여서 교샤고라 교지 예대 레벨 샤고라 교단 레벨 펜주 뚜가샤 로아다 로아보세 draw pochi yesa tel lamle draw shaura lamle draw yesa draw bo shagura aso kanga chichil tene tokuresa draw da draw bota taja sene taya yudera ti yuji yebe chane taja yesa tawa bote yungara tawa bote yujile taya yesa tawa bo chagyora chengi da chengi se 사실 색과 매 천이세로 천시에네 전대기 메타부세로 천시세 천이 소자도 직실 되는 주고 알았다 주단 제복게 말와 다나시 좋아다 좋아를 제바 계속기 다 담아치고 다들로 살아 야라제스네 분바 컴바르즈네 야라제데로와 고다 계고 찍고 토라 소바 차셔르르르데 야라르와 자 야라다 야라제 베나가도 류디 차셔데로와 야라제데로와 야라스 강발락방고라 소바도 차셔도를 야라스고라 자 야라다 야라제데 주단 저렇게 말하되 야라지연에 야라제 샤고라 야라제데 텔레토데네 차셔도 야라샤고라 자 야라다 야라제도 지신 뜨는 쪽으로 해서 봐라 연대다 연대시 채마다 시샤 유지 독자시 유네 아니 독지가 채마샤고도 동계지 유발했더니 대 셰외샤네 제지시 요사 샤고 셜자스 채매 샤와르 자와르 샤고요라 셰제다 제시라서 봐 셰제다 라서 병고 말려바다 제바보다 제바보다 레라 제바 페주 뚜뚜 이바테션도 샤다 만부체 뜨네 주바장 만부여를 때서 아시고래 주단 제부 계제 짠짠 텐션 레버죠 아마레 송도 오다 띵아조 그나 샤초 로저레스니 레라보도 소소 도와르제 대네 퍼조데 샤르쇼에네 저라데스 샤르쇼에네 가 네 높쇼리 대대요라 아니 anga pacho del tode dejon tode ya chochirera dejon tode choshadajra pacho gablo del tode ya anga shajol tode ora sako rawad drube sharcho yoda ko chokadi ina shad shara ingura tindege medwa nubde nura ingurte ya shandajil tone changda loda tindeko kaga do shawta chitone chukdo mado tachido rawad drube shad sharcho imbachi rawatinde medwa teach Gunaya.
No. So then picking up where we were in the text, then we were on page 57 with this quotation from Nagarjuna, where it says, through the example of action and agent, all remaining things should be understood. So here, when we're talking about dependent arising or dependent designation, specifically with respect to dependent arising, we can talk about sort of cause and result, the sort of results arising from causes, but also the sense of things being mutually established or mutually dependent, contingent, like when we have long and short, or something like a small house and a large house. You can only posit that small house in relation to a large house and so forth. And so these are not causal relationships, but they are ones of mutual dependency, wherein you can only posit something being long in relation to something else, or something being small in relation to something else. And so here, like when we we think about directions, it's not as though wherever you are, it's always east right there, or south or north, and so forth. Those are posited in relation to something else. So here, then taking that concept from Nagarjuna's fundamental verses on the middle way, in the commentary on the above lines, the master Chandrakirti's clear words says, so this is his word commentary then to the fundamental verses on the middle way. And he says, in addition to the agent and the action, and the appropriated and the appropriator, the wise should refute, through analyzing action and agent, the essential existence of all composite phenomena, such as the produced and the producer, the going and the goer, the seen and the one who sees, the definition and the definiendum, the arising and the agent of arising, the components and the whole, the quality and the possessor of the qualities, and the valid cognizer and the object validly cognized, and so forth, understanding that they are established only through mutual dependency. So here, just reading that all through, but going back again, when we have something like agent and action, it's not a causal relationship between those two, but it's only in relation to an action that we can posit an agent. So if we're going to posit someone as a woodworker, it's independence upon their work with wood that we can posit that someone is a woodworker, or they're a wood cutter because they're doing this action of cutting wood. And that action of cutting wood is dependent in turn on the one who does that. So these kind of have that establishment of mutual establishment or mutual dependency. So clear words here, Chandrakirti goes through many different examples, and these refute any kind of essence, a sort of like existence through an inherent essence, because of the kind of mutual contingent establishment. So it's based upon there being, for example, as he gives here, something that is produced that we can posit a producer. You can't posit one without the other. And the act of going is dependent upon there being a goer, and so forth. So too with things like seeing, like the seen, the object that is seen, and the one who sees that. Those are only established in mutual dependence, sort of contingent upon one another. And so too, when it comes to the definition and the definiendum, you can give the definition of fire as being hot and burning, but it's only in dependence upon that definiendum, that thing that illustrates that definition, that you can posit those two. And so again, we come back to, these are not causal relationships as in one thing is causing the other, but it is the case that they are mutually dependently established. And so when we have something like here, the arising and the agent of arising, or the components and the whole, like the components and the whole, when you have something that is made up of parts, so you have a house, it's only in dependence upon that sort of whole that we can posit the various parts, and the parts are in turn dependent upon the whole. You've got a house, and then the various parts of that house, the walls and the windows and the doors and so forth, and or like our body and the various parts of the body. That relationship is not one of causality. The house didn't cause the parts of the house and so forth, but they are dependent upon each other. And so when we have, again, continuing through this list, like something that is a quality and then the possessor of that quality, those two are mutually established, or the valid cognizer and the object validly cognized. You have to have an object to be realized to then be able to posit a valid cognition of that. You can't have a valid cognition in the absence of an object, and so forth. So here again, when it says that these, continuing the quotation here, that all of these examples and so forth, understanding that they are established only through mutual dependency. So thereby, the wise should refute this kind of essential existence of all these composite phenomena. And so thus, Chandrakirti gives the many different examples of dependent arisings, both compounded and uncompounded phenomena, whose identities are established established in mutual dependence on one another. So this, again, is important to recognize that this mutual dependence is not a relationship of causality, but it's one where the positing of one thing is dependent upon the other. So like in relation to you right now, I might be in the West and you are then in the East from me, but something behind me would then be to the other direction, and I would be to the east of them in relation to that. So there's no one East or West. It's independent to something else in relation to something else that we can posit those. And so too with all of these examples that Chandrakirti has given in clear words.
Oh yeah, this was. Oh, that and that ko chhe condition na judan debu da kansala soba condition ko shenda chile te ne denne kurang o to kudo. Shenda chile te ne mandene kurang o ngarang yes sulchile te me ko je ko ngo reya shi me do. O ji she yorwa chhe tamje ne de son do ka so da. Penje te ne truba ni yimbar shebar chao hindi tamade ka so. और शेजा सब वो मालूबा तेरा लेदा चेबा बोला नंबर चेबे ngो ni ju yoba kades लेदा चेबा बो शेदे रंग ngो तुबा यो मारे चिचिल ते ने मादो चेबा बो शंदल ते मे कुने चेबा बो दा लेदे तुये मे दुआ से होते नाशे छे कंदे चिने रंग छाशे दा दक्षिदा चिल ते ने को रंग ngो तुबा शा मादो 수질이 때문에 저 코란 짠짠 디레샤스 샤르데 샤르랑게 ngoy tuba 샤르네 가와이나 샤르초 대고로 나좀 미르시 대산데 디샤초르 디로조 디노초스데 시디 타치도 대고 때에메도 와 어디 인데 거 가서 ngo니 주투바 매세 에라 쇼탐제 ngo니 지 여바 가데 ngo니 지 여바 소소 여바 ngara zo samgudo ngara ge samsare samgudo phungbuda semda chorwada chi longda tezole techi denia miche te samgubedo ngara ge te samgudo sambe za rawa du tuba rangwene tuba sigora te yo mare so shala techi delne tutup jare se o ti de chek kanga tende ba she ko des chotamje ngo니 ji yoba ka de ngo니 ji yoba rangwene yoba rang ngo yoba ro chuktup do yoba taksu do yoba se 제주리 단어 어디에 샤스 증원에 전에 시신다 때문에 그런지 라야시 요고 뒤요 말와 딱서버 요 말. 딱제 제가 신이라 요 말와 딱서도 주바세 뒤요 말에 제수도 주바세 ngo니 요바 랑원에 요바 랑신기 요바 랑ngo 요바 다담바 요바세 어쩌지 찍바인 봐. 저주다 최근대지나 샬로 되진들 샤고가 마도 ngo니 랑신기 코티 바시메삼 최근대지나 가라주 르파 따네 티치지르 티마마레스 르왕기 파 샤고마도 당분이네 고추 땡게지 요 말도 랑ngo 요바시 근데 하고 하죠 그래서
So whatever phenomena then that we have isn't established as it says here. So the quotation sort of goes in a different order when we translate it. But the wise should refute through analyzing these the essential existence of all composite phenomena. So here, whatever phenomena it isn't established by way of some kind of an essence. It doesn't like we can take cause and result, for example. A cause is only posited in relation to a result because of its ability to bring forth that result, and the result too is only posited because it comes forth from a cause and so forth. They don't exist sort of in and of themselves objectively established by an own nature. So all phenomenon too are established independence upon their parts and independence upon their basis of imputation. And so it's not like, for example, with the the direction east, that there is some sort of essential east that is always east when in any kind of situation, no matter what. And so here, when we come to sort of think about the way that we think we exist, we have this sense of existing in a sense that we're sort of self-existent or autonomously, independently existent. We don't think of ourselves as being dependent upon our various parts or dependent upon sort of breathing and all of the various things that our organs are doing. We don't think of the I as being dependent upon being mentally imputed or mentally labeled. We have this sense that we exist in and of ourselves or from sort of objectively. And so here, this kind of where it talks about essential existence, we should understand that this is synonymous with existence from its own side, sort of in its own right, things having that kind of objective existence, a kind of existence that would be able to bear analysis, such that when you search for the thing designated within its basis of designation, you could find something to point to that is that thing. So these kind of terms like existent from its own side or existent, objectively existent, existent in a way that it's able to bear analysis, ultimately existent. This is what the wise should refute, understanding that all phenomena are in turn dependent and connected or dependently originated, in that they are all phenomena are merely established by imputation through thought and concept. So there, here again, all of these examples establish the kind of mutual dependency of phenomena in that they don't have this kind of essential existence.
Oh yeah. Xianyang chö tamze rangi dakshi dan dokje la döne zhubei denzhong yinbar song de yisigdwa. Xianyang chö tamze chö kante je na rangi dakshi sigdwa. Dakshi sigdwa zangko tangbo chi tongye chi warwa charshi chi. Namga tongba liya ke tongye yo mar di medo di kangba rin di medo resi daya yo mar do. Tongye ka yo mar do chi kugu yora. Da kangba resi tong suna kode zi tong suna o da di kangba resha sam kode tong ala tene ni pa dagidwa. Kangbe koda gegung zikba dan to dan tozo dakshi re. Shacho ne de gegung resi tong suna ane pa dagidwa. Shing reji ne shingi yaga do loma da chi chasharab chi tong suna o di kambi shing resha di chi resha pa dagidwa. Dakshi sudu tangbo de liya tongya chi wara. Kangba rene koda gegung zikba da chasharab re wa de dakshi re. Ngarazo nal dene nalo til tene ngazo kangba tina teye samsa dagidwa. Se dakshi sore. Dakshu sudu tela dagba chu dila kangba se dakshu dirwa. Dakshi da dakshu sore tela dagba chu de kangba rwa. Ngarazo sobo da sem ne choa la sobo liu da sem nima to yo mara. Ngarazo yoya de sobo chi da sheba chi nidwa. Sa sobo da shebe cha suji pongbo da chorwa da dushe namba shiwa kondro nga jela soba tazu dakshi re. Rwa. Dakshi de kansa de rwa. Pena mi kondro chabra china o ko namgyu de tena o ko kondro chabra doa se kondro namgyu tele tena kondro chabra yambo pa dagidwa. Mi soba komgeres na o ko sesen shimbo do sam ka tele soba le tena pa dagidwa. O sobo chimbo shi doa sa sobo le tena pa dagidwa. O ti de ko pumbu nga de dakshi rwa daage. Suji pumbu si sobo de rwa. Chorwa sudu namjine nga zo chowa dewa dongen tangnyam ti kadi ina yora. O ti chowa o yabu do dugu do sam chi soso koya rabchi yaga rabchi koya da dugu meguya chi namjine sam de yora. Sam mangshu de chorwa de yora. Sa chorwa de ni ta mara de dakshi re ma do ta re yo mara. Ene dushi sin di mara sam samlu shaji konde gado o di yabu do ati yabu medu sam di pare di amara di chichi re di kenla re sam pa dushi di kadi ine yonde gado o tine ta mara se wara. Nambar sheba, migin sheba, nawe sheba, ne sheba, che sheba tozo ta mara se wara. O ta ne she ne ke chol pa samlu ta semba se gra. Dewang kondo nga jela soba. Le da nyamo tozo duchi ji pumbu se gado. Sobo che ra, sem che, chorwa che, dushi che, te mayenge sangman duchi ji pumbu na do re. Duchi ji pumbu se na. semba yiji le ndese semba ta ane te wangi shwe kondo nga jela soba nyomo grig mambu yordo o le da nyomo to ma chan tina de do re dochi ji phungbu se to zo dakshi ro te da kaya ro jela te ne das ba ta gdo chilo me to ne sobol te ne o ti chi re sha se ta gra ne soso ge soso samsal sobol te ne ga samsata samsal ya soso semle te ne 초알 때는 들에 끼우면도 삼사 다야부 정수 삼사 다야부 개부에 끼부에 삼사 된질 땐 다르게 와라 낚시다 낚시에서 어디다 가서 뭐 담제 라라게 낚시다 녹제에서는 똑바들스 거라 강배 개구리 거래지 통하네 어디 강바레 샤 삼파 삼갱게 삼로치도가 똑바 들라 녹제에서 거라 도저 들레니 와라 닝다 똑바니 타냐서라 마노에 된다 니 강바르다 니 멜 강바세고다 니 장마세고다 니 쪽제르다 니 메시르다 니 다시르다 니 발란스르다 마노에 된다 카가 밍다도와 텔리안 도체세 도체 들레니 니 밍다 똑바니 밍레레레 따그도와 Timiko Rawa Dutuve Pumba Saricine Rawa Dutuve Pumba Sangal Rawa Dutuve in Pumbache Changmer Pumba Sichi Yongumadua Timia to go Rawane to the Pumba says to Veke Yomaratambo. The Kasha Telia Pumbasta Kasha Ming Medamata Govichilina Ming Tondama Yongra. Tell a dog Sigora. And Tinyam do Tete Bares and Lapshaduza. Telete Sigridas, Pushing Love Gudwa, Loves no Titi Yin, Samson, Samlo Kogudwa, Tell a dog jiggy. Ming da dog one, but tell a dog chasingwa. Jaza. Shetamje Rara get Dashi Giores, and then dog Giores, or tell a ten trube Tinjun Res Kanga. Dashi dan dog jig party, the Ming Rita, dog when did res, and Dashi Bedram and Rara Rus, tell Red Tagi or Mado. 다시 메고아제 코라라치 문제체제 오바르도 송데스타데 콘트란도알다 송데스 어레 돌레스 단도 롱탕도 네네 지다리야라 초남라 때네 신대 주여바다르스 대신 풍부남 때네 군주 심제 셰초도세 빼샤그도 도나르 사지선 지다리야라 초남라세 다때 니마네 신다스라 신다 콜로스데 지르바 다땡사르나 모타다 남두다 컴퓨터다 뜻을차다고도 잘라 마부 쇼지요라 대저레레레 레가 체게 대저 dak시잖아 니 컴퓨터레 디 남두레 디 모터레 스파다고도 디 양라 두저 초발을 때네 에네 신다스 모타스 남두스 뭐 되네 가이나 컴퓨터 스파 밍다기 어레셔라 지들 양라 초남라 때네 신들 줘바타르스 양라 차셰실 때네 아니 디치레스 발로타기 어레 차셰 드즈레레레 레가 셰스나 컴퓨터 레가 시게스 샤고레 마도 차셰레 때 마도 젠디 레가 시고 레가 징게 찍되는 째요 말에 라운에 요세테르 메세데 레가 징게 컴퓨터 디레스 되는 시트에요 말에 칠로데 빠빠요데 나로레 머신다메데 자니뼈 유지라 다다다메데거라 대저 강가레레 레가 싱게데 텐데 레가 싱게들 밍파타니 탄디 컴퓨터 레세 멘타샤로아 자자 다실레 뜨고도 샤셴다메데 레가 싱게데졸레데 아니 텔레 밍지 따기와라 밍자 디 남두레스 파타스와 dakshiti tina kolo da chi pakwa da nalo te jimbashin dhamadayora tezu kanka dakshira tezu le tene di namdu rese ta namdu pi sonsi ya kya ya chi chi lega chi di pir sonsi ora ta pengen di rese chi li zugu zusa ke yo mara kanka lega mambo shivu che ne pir ke yorda ene teri ya ta namdu pir sonsi tagitwa sa ko tene tak basare ma to rangwene yo ma lega jinge di rangwene Rawan the Tubachi Legacy Yomaris, Mambuchi, Daxila Turchin Del, and then Dojik Patane, 다 남루린 로서 라 풀성세 메타가라 어디서 거야 지들 양라 초남라 때네 신다 줘봐다르스 지들 양라 초발라 때네 아니 대신다레 대남루레스 파 도지게 타녀 주요레서 거라 줘봐서도 맹기 타녀더라 대대레 삼사데 똑베 타녀더라 타녀리니 요다 자에 타녀다 로이 타녀세 타녀세데 가가 하고 했던다 명답이 와라 네 지진남루르다 네 강바르다 네 신르다 네 메타르다세 가가 명답이 와라 어디래 이신 풍부남되네 군수 숨제 제도 어때나시 풍부가불라 때네 풍부가부 가루를 때네 다시 풍부가부 가루를 때네 도시 명당 똑베 네 자시레 네 등루레 와 네 때네 소소제 남네 풍바레 가와레 강바레 어떤데 봐 따요레 대점을 샤고레 쓰거라 타냐게 왕게 파타네 대점을 샤고르마도 타냐게 다시단 도실라 마데베제 코코나 레가 징게 찍수 라완도 주바 랑원에 주바 랑신기 주바 시요 마레스 거다 쳐 강가 된데레 마잉게 카셰지 domneni 지레스 제라웬티 자와체스나 자와체 샤고르와 디치토나로 지다 양라 천원 때네시 대신 풍부남되네 군주 숨제 셰초도 군주도 타녀도 예스 군주도 예스라 당 담바리나 페네 치글이야 닥시다 도실레 때 먹어서 코란디레스 지랑을 주주사치요고라 디요 말에 군주도 요바레스 당 담바리요 말레스 거라 당 담바리요는 원에 치요나 제네 타녀 시고라 군주 semje shechodo so ganzo semje shede 풍부하고 가루를 때네 아니 네 발라레 따레 메레 시스타네 타녀 쌈도 봐 지구야마도 담바 주바 shecho 제바요 마레스가라 야 티버도 지구나
So here, furthermore, the Buddha said that all phenomena are dependent arisings established in dependence on their respective bases of imputation and imputed terms and concepts. So here, it's important to understand this kind of dependent establishment or dependent arising, as in things are dependent upon this process of imputation, that there is a basis of imputation, and then the imputing of terms and concepts. So here there has to be the arising, the appearance, the seeing of something that is the basis upon which we then designate something as existing. So if you just have like empty space and there's nothing appearing or arising, you don't label things or impute things, oh, there's a horse or there's a flower, there's a house or whatever. So there needs to be a kind of basis of designation. That is something that appears, something that we see, and then we have this process of imputing, oh, that's a house, on the basis of seeing this collection of parts that includes like doors and windows and so forth. We then say, oh, there is a house. So you have something that is the basis of imputation, that appearance, that arising, and then the process of designating that thing. So here we when it comes to the kind of way that we see things, we don't normally kind of acknowledge that we are, like, for example, when it comes to the self, that the I is something that is designated, that is imputed on the basis of these 5 aggregates. So we have the I, which is the thing designated, and the basis of designation or basis of imputation, which basically is our 5 aggregates, our form, and then that which falls into consciousness, things like feeling and our process of discrimination and karmic formations and so forth. And so again, it's based upon seeing an appearance of something. We have to have a basis upon which we then designate. So again, for example, a person, when we designate a person, it could be on the basis of any of those things that are within the aggregates. So if we have someone that's like, they give the appearance of being angry, then we designate, oh, that person is angry. So there's something that's arising, that's appearing. There's something in their sort of appearance or their attitude that causes us to then designate, oh, that person is angry, or oh, that person is practicing patience, or so forth. Oh, that person has a large body. Based upon the kind of appearance of something, we take that as the basis of designation, and then we impute or we designate a kind with terms and concepts onto that. And so this is the way that everything is dependently designated. Again, when we have this collection of aggregates, it can be any one of those aggregates that is the sort of basis for designating the I. For example, it could be our feelings. We think like I feel happy or I feel sad based upon taking that feeling as the basis of designation, or our form as the basis of designation, or discrimination, like when we say, oh, that's this person, or oh, that's my teacher, oh, that's my mother. That sort of is the way in which we are then using that particular, we're taking that as the basis of then imputing in term and concept this idea of I. And so we can do this with any sort of, whether it's our consciousness, discrimination, and among our consciousnesses, our sort of visual or oral, our olfactory, our gustatory, or our tactile consciousness, or our mental consciousness. Whatever sort of is suitable, we can use as the basis of designation. So again, or this could refer to karmic formations. The basis of designation is those 5 aggregates. And then on that basis, we designate like, I am happy, I am sad, and so forth. So here, as it says, again, the Buddha said that all phenomena are dependent arisings, established in dependence on their respective bases of imputation. So again, there needs to be something that arises, that appears to us, on the basis of which we then impute with terms and concepts. So here, when it comes to the sort of conceptual we can have a kind of imputation with concept and with name as well. We give something appears, and then we give the name. Oh, this is a house, or this is a horse, or this is an ox, or this is a plane, or whatever it may be. If it were the case that something existed, phenomena existed kind of autonomously without depending upon that mental imputation, or that imputation through terms and concepts, we wouldn't have like say different terms for a vase or a pot. Everybody, it would all have the same term because it exists like that from its own side. But this is not the way that things work. We designate names we impute them on various bases of designation. And so they then, people, different groups give different names. It's not like we all give the same name to every single object. So when you teach children, you teach them, oh, this is this object, this is that object. And thereby they learn to impute the concept and the term together. So here, when we are examining the way in which things exist in this way, quoting from then a sutra, it says, as it says in sutra, just as one speaks of a chariot independence upon collections of parts, so we use the convention living being independence upon the aggregate. So in older times, they would use this example of a chariot, but we can use anything as an example, like cars or planes or computers, and look at how independence upon a certain collection of parts, we designate, oh, that is a car, that is a plane, and independence upon that collection of parts, those appearing to us, we then impute with terms and concepts. Oh, that plane is flying. Oh, that plane is landing, and so forth. So here, it is dependent. It is independence upon a variety of different factors that we give that particular name. But so, like for example, there's a collection of parts, like wheels and the wings and all of the components that make up a plane. And independence upon that, we designate, oh, that is a plane. The plane is not its parts. And when we try to search for, like, say we see the plane flying, and we say, oh, well, that plane is flying. Well, where is that act of of flying. We can't actually find that within that basis of designation. We can't find something that we can point to and say, that is the plane, or this is the act of flying, but rather they're merely dependently designated with terms and concepts on that particular basis that appears, that arises. So here, this is, if there were that kind of so independence upon the aggregates, like someone's form appears to us and we say, oh, that's Tashi, or oh, that's Tundrub, or something, there's the appearance and we say, oh, that's a pillar, oh, that's a house, and so forth, without relying upon that process of imputation or designation. It's not as though things have some kind of autonomous objective existence from their own side. But as they say here in this quotation from the sutra, it is independence upon collection of parts. So we use the convention living being independence upon the aggregates, thus explaining the sort of level of conventional existence. Conventionally speaking, we can say, oh, this is a living being, independence upon their aggregates. But if it were ultimately existent, we would have to be able to find something within that basis of designation that we could point to and say, oh, this is that living being. We can't find anything and point to anything, and thus it is not ultimately existent. But conventionally, we can speak of, for example, a living being independence upon the aggregates.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's the she shingda rangi yala kolola sokwala tene trado kisro shingda rangi yala dakshi kolo da de nalo chashele tene roa. Ane Doji trada tokwe tanya isiwara. Shingda rangi yala kolola sokwala tenes dakshiche. Trado kisi di shingda shi cheche se doji de che. Trada tokwe tanya che. Cheche se takwe yoba truba tarso te takwa tsamjirwa doji chashe mabuti dala tene. Ane de shingda re, de namdu re, takpa te tsamji truba re suwa yob se de, takpa yoba truba ta re se, takshi tina shi, kansa de chikpa re su so, ta de, takshi pungbu nga la tene siwa ra, pungbu la tene, kansa chi takpa tsamji kyan se, pungbu nga yo re, te su chi tong ne, ane de trashi re, tungru re, ta re, simjen re, spa ta yo ra. Takpa tsamje kya kansa yobar rubar sun so se. O takpa tsamje kya kansa yobar, ta kansa yutsu te tsokbar tanda. Rwa namdu ta che tina shinche de kansa de pumbu ngabu kanru chile teni pa lu pa tagi ora, ming tagi ora. O te tsamje ko kansa yobar, yobar shawar ta tsegan rwa raya ke yomare. Chashe da tesul ten pachi ta so o te tsamje ko ta kansa yuju zobar ta nganzu ye samju ngara samna rawa du truba shibuji ye samgu dwa nga sidu be sobu phasha sem phasha chwa phasha te nge sem re nge chwa de nga ngara loga chi rawa chi ye sru sam ko dwa o lo so yo ma de se tesul ten pa ta wa tsamla ya kansa yuju zobar de se Tezu lega cheba tele kansa ka lega che khane keji shane taagi keji shegi sigora sobu dhugu dono ko dhugu do se sha taga cha sha ugra mato ta nga drowa poti rawa chi chega dono yo ma re sigora tene takwa tsam chu tamje tene takwa tsam yin sunguda dona ra tokwe wangin chigde namda de se dakshi chashe me dra chile tene kora mayingi chashe mabu chile tene ane traga pa tag yore stokwe wangin chigde namda tese. Meto da chi che ka be yabu shebu tu pa taya te chashe tu zule tene ane su ku pa le pa ta shab yore te wangi shagware mado tokwe wangi pa shagware tanya je wangi dakshi la tene tanya je wangi pa takware te tsamle shagware ta ko tele lo so rangwene ke yo mare chen ni yo mare te tsam gi ta ge chawa chiba sha go re se yo ra ya te chi yo nan de se kansa yo ban du bar so te tsam ge kansa yu su so go re ste ha ko ra cha da
So Here, then following that quotation, it says, we establish the existence of a chariot through labeling by terms and concepts, saying this is a chariot, independence on the parts of a chariot, the wheels and so forth. So here, the kind of when we designate something like a chariot, we do so independence upon the various sort of parts, the wheels and the internal kind of workings of that, and we say that is a chariot based upon designating that with term and concept on a particular basis of designation, something that appears to us. It's independence upon that collection of parts that we then designate that thing as a chariot. And that is the extent of its existence. We can't posit some sort of really autonomously, truly existent kind of chariot. And so too, when it comes, the Buddha points out that we likewise establish the existence of a person by merely labeling this is a person, independence on its basis of imputation, the aggregates. And so that is the extent of the existence of a person, that mere dependent existence. So when we have the 5 aggregates and we designate a person on the basis of those aggregates, like we see a form and we say, oh, that's Tashi, well, that is the extent of their existence. If we tried to search for something else that really existed in the way that it appears, we couldn't actually find it. So it is, as it says here, it's that mere labeling, this is a person, in independence on the basis of imputation that constitutes the existence of a person or of any other kind of phenomena. So we have this sense, though, that this, with respect to all phenomena, and in particular the I or the self, that it exists like somehow independent of the aggregates, as like the one that is in control of the aggregates. If we were to set aside like the form aggregate and the feelings and consciousness and so forth, there would be this I that is somehow like in control of that, or that is the one causing those things to function, or somehow behind all of the sort of actions of the I. But when we really search, we can't find any sort of I that is above and beyond the sort of functions or actions that, and the way that we merely designate that in dependence upon a particular basis of designation. And so too, all phenomena then are merely dependently designated by term and concept. They're not established from their own side. Apart from that basis of designation, when we search for the thing designated within that basis, we can't find it. And thus, again, the sort of extent of existence of phenomena is as mere dependent designations.
Oh yeah. Tēnā chū tamchē rāngi chāshē tāng dōgzhē kī tānyā lā tēne chūbē tēnchū yīnshē yé sō tē sōngzā chū tamchē rāngi chāshē sam tākshī rō tē tsū tāng dōgzhē mīngdā tōgbē tānyā lā tēne chūb gu rē sē. Tēnā chū tamchē rāngi chāshē tāng dōgzhē kī tānyā lā tēne chūbē tēnchū yīnshē yé sē tēnchī dēpar chōngā sē tē rō. Kyudan kien la tenje debar shunga re, che kujyo re, dakshi dan chashe la tenje, dokche la tene, truba la ya tenje debar shunga se, kocho yo ra. Tena chu tamje rangi chashe dan dokche la tene, trube tenjung yin shin se. Teya di pumba se takbe tene pumba de, tan di pumba re se, di namdu re, di kambuta re se, apa takba yina se wara. Pumba she takbe te ne kambuta da namdula soba kaya ba te tse na se ta tse ga chimbe ne sura pumba she kangla takbe kyu takshi chashe so da ta tse ga dona raya ke yo ma re sura ta de kadire kambuta kadire se na kurang chashe lega chenge ta so le te ne de kambuta re se mingji ta shoro mige te samgi ko yuzu soar mado ta tinane kage computer res ne chigli zo sa ke yo marwa chilo de jene pagba de zo de yora te marwa tine pagba kora mado nalo chuje tu mena computer chago de chago marwa te inde ka sora ta soba che soba sene nye yo ba chi yo mare ta ga cha sha jure se Te lega cheba te computer lega cheba tag lega chawa cheba te shawo re sigura. De ne se trebe tenjun yin shin se. Te ya de pumba se tag bete ta pumba da kawa da kari na namdu da kari na. Cheba te yin shin se. Sewa na pumba se tag be ju da shi da chega chena. Ke da sa ke shi da bete le kansa da chene pumbu nga ma do yo ma to. Tā computer da yine tina lo machine mambo yikira tonda chida namdu tsuzuni yikira o tezu shura takbe gyu dakshi chashe soda tele shen kane jan pumbo ate tsaga dona tina lo ge dakshi chashe tsuzu re ne mare tele shenda jili yang tezu pa shane shenda ji yoba teye yo mare o tende chene raya yo mare sigwa na Pumba Rangwine yo para Madu Chas, Rangwine yo mares. Pumba Yusunis, Pumba Ane yo marbes na yo rese. Tene takba samle yo rese. Tanya Jowangi Shakwa, Takipa Lupa, Chashe Tuzule Tene takba, Tetsam Yuzu Zovre, Ta Chashe Tuzulega Cheba de Ko, Tagi Lega Cheba Tarwa, Tagi Pumbunga Karu Lega Cheba de, Tagi Chawa Cheba Shawara. Namdu da tezu chashe re lega cheba de namdu chawa cheba shagura. Chawa chenge chi mixe shenda chi yo mares, re ne mare tele shendo yo mares. Tezu le tene takwa tsamla. Ku lega che te chidu te tsimba che warda. Tokwe tak tsam sigdwa. Tege yuchu drikba che wara. Yuchu ne rangi dakshi la tene dokche ki le di pumba she takwa tsamki. O te takwa tsamje pumbe na shabde yabu yoze chulu na chu zengira trangzi lu na kari lu na chi kari lu na kotin zengi ora lega chi ora chu zimba so je chawa chi ne ji pumba yuzu sokba yeno se namdu rashi de chashe to je tezo kanga pa ku jore chawa ne mi tange ti tinal yora tegi chi je ne ko puru chen ro yora o te zambi ko chawa che dan sokba namdu chawa che se sha kore mato tele los chawa chenge de kawa do se chae ke yo mares rangune yo mares gora tene ta pa chamre te jen de bar jo are mambo che le te chashe le te dokje le te te zo ge ne tom le chi sha shi ta ga simba che yuju zo ba de se gora mo de bo de chi jo na zo bo yuju zo ba yin no sa
No. So, therefore, all phenomena are dependent arisings established independence on their parts and the imputation of conventions. So here again, we have the sort of all phenomena being dependent arisings, not just in the sense of that kind of causal dependency or the relationship between the parts and the whole, that sort of mutual dependency, but also that there is that relation of the thing imputed or the thing designated and the basis of designation. So we designate, oh, this is a vase or this is a plane and this is a computer, and that is the extent of the existence of that phenomena. When we then try to search for like, oh, well, where is that computer within its basis of designation? We can't find anything aside from that mere imputation by term and concept. There's nothing that exists from its own side. Like if we look at a computer and we try to say, well, where is that computer within the basis of designation? It's not sort of just the outside, the external casing of the computer. That's not the computer. It's not it's sort of something within it. There are probably thousands of parts inside of that computer, and we can't point to one thing or something that is the computer as it is designated by or imputed by term and concept. But yet we can say that the computer is able to function, that the computer exists. So although it lacks this kind of objective existence from its own side, it's still able to perform functions. So for example, continuing in the text, Moreover, when we search for the object of the label, this is a picture, and ask, well, what is the picture? We do not find anything that is the picture within those parts, such as its bulbous base and so forth, that constitute its cause or its basis of imputation. Nor do we find anything that is the picture anywhere, separate from the parts. So here, there's nothing that we can point to aside from that basis of designation. You have something that is designated as a picture, but when you try to search for that thing within the various parts, you can't point to something that exists that is that picture. We have to be sort of satisfied with this level of mere dependently designated existence. However, thus the picture does not exist from its own side. There's no sort of picture that has objective existence. But nonetheless, the manner in which the pitcher, which is able to perform the function of holding water and so forth, is completed is by merely affixing the label, this is a pitcher, with a mind that imputes based on the pitcher's basis of imputation. So here, although it is the case that there is no pitcher that exists objectively, independently of our labeling on a particular basis of designation, oh, that's a pitcher. It's still able to function. That pitcher can hold water or honey or whatever it is, and we're able to pour things from it and so forth. When it comes to any sort of object, like a plane, although we can't point to something within the basis of designation or aside from the basis of designation and say that is the plane, it's still able to function. It's able to fly. We can't look at some sort of part and say that is that thing, but yet that level of existence, which is merely designated, is still able to encompass functionality.
Oh yeah. When the tene tagwa samdo trube tenjun dene so kondo shebe tawshida chashela tene doje yi tagwa samge ene yoba shaku rese ramene yo marese o tende shechu de songyora shegyora didrave tene tagwa samdo trube tenjun dene Uma tenju lo de temo maimbe tenjun josu shigayin des uma bas uma tenju ada uma rangi bas ni yora para sangi se dane so tendera mate me ni yora otina neta uma tenju lo chena ani tati josu temo maimbe re ma do shenda tende jotogu yo mare sung yora chida tongba ni da dame se to zulia Nangbe Truda Ma Tara Mambuchi Shaya Yorwa, Tanda de Uma Tenjo Lu Chane, Tartuk, but Uma Tenjo Lu di Siwardo. Oh, Nidra Tene Tagba Sam to Trube Tenjun de Nese. Uma Tenjo Lu de Timo Mayembe Tenjun Josu Shiga in de Ese. Dawa Dragbe Shigaben Drebales, Loven Dawa Dravake, Chadu Shata Dreba Yorwa, Tinar Sosha Asore, Drebale, Shigaben Drebale. Kande sondo sena pumbala sokba nam rangi gyule tenye da shendo namba nge cheba chena yoba mayi meje se pumba da namdula sokba kansa la sokba kari yena chö kanga chikba ra pumbala sokba nam rangi gyule so rangi dakshi dile sigo de gyudi gyudan drebu nyegi gyuge sigo mara rangi dakshi le sigo ra Tenye da shendo namba nge chana yoba mayin shense. Dakshi kansa rabchene dakshi pumbu nga le. Ene pumbu nga bu kabru da chik tuwa yo mare. Rangwa trube chik tuwa me, rangwa trube shendo me rwa. Wo ti namba nge chana se. Wo ti tam tawri wo lamne dhumar. Kyule tenye da shendo namba nge chana yoba mayin me ke se. Teta naya se namba nge se chidwa ho tete shingda raya la le shende me shemi mayin tenden ya me yala la me yala dade me duba tsam me yimi chi shino so ore tadi mara ti ta dun sheya chida ta nga sheya chi ni yora o tanda di dina ka se pungmi pungbu le she me tela pungmi terde me 디신시바 풍대메 디신시바 관심시 싸워시를 값서 탕에 권에 제바체는 소라 오만 주바 값서 대가는 니 더밖에 다 되게 제반자라 풍미에서 풍부다 식도요 말해서 풍부를 때 셴베 라오메 추기요 말해서 풍부를 셴베 내가 풍미에서 다들 풍부 때 셴베 추기 때네요 말해서 와라 풍부를 다 때 추기 때네요 말해서 내가 풍미때네 디신시바 풍대면서 네 풍부를 내배 추기요 말해서 와라 산제를 자네서 와가지고 산제다 심자란다 셴카리네 라문에 주베 동바데 찍바로 자체도 라문에 주 자충에도 라문에 마주tin데 말을 쳐간게 내수 찍바로 그 소설이잖아 다 소설이잖아 풍미에서 풍미 풍부래셔메 풍부 라문에 주베 나지요나 풍부면에 가루치 인구를 뒤어 말와 풍부가부 가야 다 라문에 주베 다 말해서 와라 풍미에서 풍부가블에 대셴베 다지 요르베스네 대요 말와 풍미 풍부래셔메스 텔라 풍미에서 다들 시제 텔레 안에 풍부데 대셴베 수기 때니 요르베스 간주 잘라를 줘는데 저스디 대셰 저스가를 포바 샤셔도 가요 샤셔라 대셴베 수기 때버와 엘레트체 타바체라 디가데 싱도리 루샤요나 타바들이야 싱도 대셴베 수기 때요라 어디네 시제 풍미 풍부래셰메 텔라 풍미에서도 다데 댄서체 텔라 풍부데 파텐체 때요 말해서 와라 데르데 메시아 풍부데 댄시체 텔라 다데 댄셴베 수기 때네요 말해서 와라 풍미 풍부래셰메 텔라 풍미 다들 풍부 댄셴베 템베 수기요 말해 데르데메 풍부리야 다 댄셴베 수기 때네요 말해서 풍미 풍부래셰메 텔라 풍미 데르데메 디신시바 풍데메 가사 라니 풍부란 덴베 수기요 봐야 말해서라 덴바들은 덴수니요라 ngochibben dembada ngo tadeben dembasiniora shena nangdense shemi sungdena sera shena nangdense de kansa delia pashudan dembare tadan dembare paladan dembare sera kola modadan dembare sera ro namdudan dembare kangbadan dembare kangba yobare dembasigora o tinde dan shengin dembesula yomare sigora ngochibben dembesuje yomare kansa la sudan dense nashi sopudan dense de kansa la ngochibben suji dembal sigora 자 라문에 tuve suji dena yana tenshen de yana ngochibben suji den고를 tinde ka maris tanga sigdo 탕에 제바체네 네 따데 다 삼을 땅게르시네 근데 삼당고요도 소소데 소소 풍부 소기 풍부를 nga 삼사 삼을 따 아니 nga 랑웨도 트바데 라와치 요바 남주 삼을 코르 삼을 따 nga 라와치 요나 타nye 요왕기 바 샤바사 멤버스 라와치 요나 네게 가르에서 풍부나리 요르베세 수마르 소마르 세레레 삼을다 멤버 삼다고라 풍미에서 풍부레 대셴바요 마르스 대삼다 텔라 풍미에서 다들 나로도 봤을 풍부디 치료 받대 되면 대셴데요 마르스 텔라 풍미 데르데메 야나 풍부레야 다 대셴 수 때문에 수기요 마르스 야나 풍부레야 다 오치베 수기 뎀베 수기요 마르스 ngochibbe suji ngo tade suji dembayo ngo tadesana tatan dembara paladan dembara kangbadan dembara modan dembara setara ngochibbasana kechin sopudan dembara seris o tinde rawa suji dembayo maris o tinde tanga chagdo zawashira kasu oma jubba kasu ni toba charo shingda rayela le shendeme shingdal chansora shemi mayi denden yang she yala la mi yala dader me duba tsame yib me yala tsoba de Shinda Yala to Ruru Chabate, Shinda Maresa. Chiloga Yip de Shinda Maresa. Namdu Rachel, Namdu Chasha Kanga to Saw the Maresa. Chiloga Yip de Namdu Maresa. O Tedecharada. Tatin Hijani. Tabasan Dawa Traba Omachuba so Tatin Hichabaza. Tata Tawa Yuna Yip the Mandro Samsa. Tende Tawa you get only Yip de Mares Park of Yora. Ya what is Lama Mandochasa.
So,
Tanga de Chilab and it Tatin de la Ni Tabachara till Labdura.
So this way of positing dependent arising as mere dependent imputation is unique to the system of the Prasangika Madhyamikas. So here, this kind of understanding of dependent arising, that is really the dependence of this dependence between the basis of dependent, the dependency between the imputation with terms and concepts and the basis of imputation. This is unique to the Prasangika Madhyamikas. We have among the Madhyamikas, the Prasangikas and the Svatantrikas. But here, when we get into the various philosophical schools, although they might all sort of espouse an idea of impermanence or selflessness and so forth, they have different kinds of understandings of selflessness. And so we need to be aware of that. So here, the master Chandrakirti's commentary on the 400 stanzas by Aryadeva states, a pitcher and so forth are not found to exist on application of the fivefold analysis to determine whether they are one with their cause, i.e. their basis of imputation, or other than their basis of imputation. Nonetheless, as dependent imputation, they are capable of such functions as holding and dispensing honey, water, milk, and so forth. So here, getting back to this idea of this fivefold analysis, whatever kind of phenomena it is, whether it's like a pitcher or a plane or a person, if we take, for example, a person, and this sort of fivefold analysis is described in the fundamental verses on the middle way by Nagarjuna, where he says that the Tathagata is neither identical to nor different from the aggregates. The Tathagata is not in the aggregates, nor the aggregates in him. The Tathagata does not possess the aggregates. So what is the Tathagata? So here we can the sort of if there were some kind of self or I that existed autonomously, independently from its own side in the way that it appears to us, then it would have to exist in one of these five ways as being like identical with the aggregates or different from the aggregates, as somehow kind of having this relationship of being supported, like the Tathagata, or again, we can apply this like to our own self. We are all equal. It's not like some sort of higher beings don't exist inherently or do exist inherently. There's no difference between different levels of beings. We are all equal in that we don't have this kind of existence from our own side. And so whether we're referring to, like it does in these verses on the fundamental verses of the middle way, refer to the Tathagata, or whether we apply this to our own self and we are looking at it in that way, they're both equally non-existent in any of these ways. So when we sort of have this, the Tathagata is not in the aggregates, we can have a relationship between this sort of thing that is supported and the support for that. And that is not a relationship that the aggregates and the self have, nor is there kind of a relationship of, so we don't have the self existing in the aggregates somehow, as though we're supported by the aggregates, or the aggregates being supported by the self. There's not either of those relationships, nor does the self possess the aggregates. And here we can get into the idea of possession of something where the possession is of a different nature, as in like, oh, I have a cow, or I have an ox, or I have a car. something that is of a different nature, or the kind of possession that is of the same nature, as seeing like, oh, a person has form and so forth. Neither of those relationships are the kind of relationship between the thing designated and the basis of designation, in this case, the self and the aggregates. And so here, when we are going through this kind of fivefold analysis, it would again be referring to the self and the aggregates, or any sort of basis of thing imputed and its basis of imputation existing as identical, different, totally different, having this relationship of being support and supported, either of those ways, or this kind of relationship of possession. And so then, in addition to that, we need to think about this in relation to ourselves again. So when we have this sense of I, we have a sense of an I like existing in a way that it is not dependent upon anything else, sort of existing autonomously. And then we search for that. Does that self exist sort of identical with the aggregates or separate from the aggregates, and so forth? Go through these different kinds of relationships. And when it comes to then, as was mentioned, the sevenfold. So there's a fivefold kind of analysis, as is described in Nagarjuna's Fundamental Verses on the Middle Way. And Chandrakirti, in his own entry to the Middle Way, describes two additional kinds of relationships that would be the kind of thinking that the I exists as the mere collection of the aggregates, or the basis, the thing designated is merely the collection upon which it is designated, or that it is the sort of shape or configuration of the basis of designation. And those two are then refuted in that sevenfold kind of analysis by Chandrakirti.
Oh yeah. That's
Oh, geez.
Kumbala soba nam rangi dakshida tingi da shanye namba ngam namba tunji ko ne pa chegi ne nye yo mare che yo ba ma yime ki rag mare yo mare che de na de da na ya se ane tende se na ni ju me na ya se ora tene tak ba transit da tene tak ba chamdo ane pobe na le transit lu ba da chu lu ba da karen tre ko chawa che tup ka ji sha gore pumba na le chulu transit jibe pumba shero transit yibe pumba me yibe pumba she ko le ga chi wa de so chawa che ne ba de sha gore so ta tunda thanga da ta tyung ki chen na ra yo ma re ra ti me na cha she de zo chawa che ba le te ne le pa chawa che ba ta kwa cham ji le ga che ba de sha gore se chupasu kito ure neje che chala sha cho ure to tina sida lu cho yor to o namdu rabshine tawana stina min do cho de lega chi phirgi yore ma bhabgi yore kanga chawa che ba sha thu kure se yora transida chu zimba da chu ala soba chu asini chu chu se chu le ya de se ora chu ala soba chawa ronwar jo wa de chi ngwa ba me chawa sha o tipe ngo charo re se tende uma tenjua ke tawa shedu sarwa thanga da tha tuni cheba chene ragu mare ina chashe tu chawa cheba le tene namdu chawa cheba pumbe chawa cheba me chawa cheba migi chawa cheba kaga sha tu gure te chamle chawa sha tu bade ene ngosar chembo res uma tenjua ke keju de chire songyor do tene kawale sa transit ngoma sawa shegam she somba ta ro sha what did you do, Shilashana?
So here, continuing in this kind of this quotation on the commentary, from the commentary on the 400 stanzas, it says, again, a picture and so forth are not found to exist on application of the fivefold analysis or sevenfold analysis to determine whether they are one with their cause, as in their basis of imputation, or other than their basis of imputation. So they can't be found upon investigation, whether we use this fivefold analysis or sevenfold analysis. We can't find them as being one with or different from their basis of imputation and so forth. Yet, nonetheless, Nonetheless, as dependent imputations, they are capable of such functions as holding and dispensing water, honey, milk, and so forth. So yet, even though when we can't find something that exists from its own side other than what has been designated by imputation, we can still observe that things are functional. They are able to, for example, we designate, oh, that is a pitcher, and that pitcher is able to hold water or dispense water or honey or milk or whatever it may be. And so this explaining of the Prasangika Madhyamaka view shows us that even though when you investigate, try to analyze and find the thing designated within the basis of designation and can't find that thing, you can still posit all functionality. Things are still able to function. And so as he says, how amazing is this?
Oh yeah. 다든다 거기 분배날 장질로에 자와치에 대사마레 그래도 남들 좋아해 삼을던다 하고도 남들 나게 차셔 마보지를 나가 지어라 아니 미티게 삼을던이 봐줄 거야 다 자와치고도 아니 질로 바바다 소소 대사 네티데 생아라 니 쿠데 쇼고도 이나 그 라와도 전에 생게 지요 말때서 강가를 내가 전에 15절에 뜻인 줄네 아니 컨트롤되고도 자와치기도 야밥기와래 살마밥기와래 야포기와래 미강가 파수 깨기와래 어디 얌참부시다래 해서기와라 어디 샤투고래 땡진레바를 좋아하면 자와디 샤투고래 근데 분게 깽게 된디르시 찔러 조조사케요 말아 이나 남주 자와체버에서 샤고래 대삼리야 남주 풀소 남주 대소 남주 저기 조사 아까가 샤고래 대나시 가사 풍부가부 가루 내가 지도 로하다 대바다 오하다 가와다 두바다 삼바상부 참바케와 니지케발 소바카가 어떻게 샤고를 마도 챙게지 라와 지요 말에서 망부질로 뜻인 될니고 자와집으로 이나 자와지 특비와래 들려 자와집을 샤투비와래 치료받아 주다마 망부질 랑원에 매네 자와지 특고 말에서 와라 랑와도 주바지 거래 자와챙게지 조조세지 거래 마도 조조세 지에매버 강가에 또또 전에 되잖아 자와집에 샤토고 말을 삼겨와라 자체 롱게 말해서 랑원에 매나 교수야지 랑원에 여고래 되게 대부야지 랑원에 깨버시 매나 자와제토 말해서 가도 어떤데 말해서 땡진 대버려 좋아 당시당 차세 라땡제 도시 라땡네 되니 대참을 샤는 자와제토가 대 샤토고 와래서 오마테기올라 어때서배 양첨부레세 양첨부스도 도와드리시고 말다 야와드리시고다 뭐 살아서 난저를 세르죠 어디 질라면 그래
So here again, in this manner, dependently arisen phenomena are free from. Sorry. So here again, describing this, it's not just like a pitcher and being able to say hold honey or something like that. We could use the example of a plane and flying. Like when we are in a plane, we can speak about the plane is flying, the plane is landing. You're able to sit on that plane, to sleep on that plane, whatever it may be. But when you try to search for the thing that is designated, plane, independence upon that basis of designation, all of those various parts and so forth, there's no one thing that you can point to as being, oh, that is the plane that is flying and so forth. But yet, independence upon all those causes and conditions, independence upon our mental imputation, we can say, oh, the plane is flying, the plane is landing, and there is complete functionality within that. But yet, we can't say point to something that is within the basis of designation and sort of posit that as existing from its own side. So here, when it comes to the Prasangika Madhyamaka view, one can still posit functionality within the context of there not being some kind of intrinsic or objective existence. So we can still posit things like developing love and compassion, the functioning of various things is still perfectly tenable within that view. Whereas for some non-Buddhists, as well as for some lower Buddhist schools, without having something to point to, without having some kind of objective existence to be able to say, oh, that is that thing that objectively exists from its own side, for them, you wouldn't be able to have functionality in the absence of that. So they would see it as contradictory that if there is no such sort of objective existence or existence from the side of the object, then you can't posit there being functionality. Whereas here for the kind of prasangika madhyamaka view, it's actually because even in the absence of having something that you could point to within the basis of designation, all is able to be posited as merely dependently designated and function within that. So here, when it's sort of like, how amazing is this? This is a more positive connotation, not sort of like how strange. It's a very positive kind of connotation.
Oh yeah, that is Shendale Chacho Urno. Computer Sobat Citizen Pay, Tendi Mambuchi Sone, whereas a million Lawa Chachi Doa. Cotendi Mambuchi Sone, the Cotendi Yotu Guara. Never Kangachiko, Tina Kachi, the Chichikares, Kangale, Kangachetudo. Cotendi Deberjon, Tendi Kandachi Manga saw in Ako, Tezunium do any Lakachetu Guara. Tezukanga Mozara, Shiris Guara. Oh yeah, Tendi Bache. Tena tenjong che kanyeba this one mo ja jeja tena tenjong che kanyeba de da ne rangwe ne sam rawa do drube tongba yinbe se tenjen debar jo che kanyeba tezo ke chawa che ya de chawa cheba bo de rawa do druba che rangwe ne druba che yo ma re se mambo je cho che de dan del ne ne che chawa che chi sha gu ma do Rawa Chene Chawa Chenge Chiksu Takseba Rangwene Rangshin di Rangi Ngoyutsu Chawa Chenge Direse Chiksu Ten Yo Marwa. Oh, this was a tension debar Juatsu Chawa Chiguana. Then I tension get Chur Kang by the Dani Rangwene some Rawado Trube Tongba Yimbe Takbe Tadan Java dance. That tiny that Treve U said the Shagura, Umetawa should tiny that Treve U Shaguara. So Tata to Ramune Trubatilla, Tata Shagwara. Rama to Trubachianiko Kita Takba Truku Yordo, so tell you Tata se. Umateju Lulia, Rama to Trubachiana, Ramune Truba Rangi, Trubachiana, Takbe Tartawas, Tioma, Ramune Trubamarwa, till long by night Tata La Sigra, Norita. Doctor that Jawachero. Rangwine Yube Tongbar Chachi Nibesita, Rangwine Trube Tongba Chawach and get the Rawan to Trubachi Yomare, Mambochi Tsoj and Delne Legachi Yore. This Chawacheba Shagore. Chachi Niba Shagura, Me Sekidua, Metratangdua, Namdu Purgadua, Kambuta to the Legachi Dua, Motato Zundron and Legachi Dua. So tension debacho some the chawachi but the shaku the sigora chawachi get rawachi manaya tension debacho you bet you chawachi with the shaku with the mashana cheddar hondura baba God so ramune yebe toya chachi nebe cheber me use rawan to dubachi mana lega chenge rawan to bandere Chi Raya Mana, Zuzu Sechi Mana. And the time ever was a Chawacheto Maras, all Mother Chawacheto would esse. Tension Devanage was the Chawacheto would esse. Cheba Mares, Meba Mares, Chawach and get the Meba Chetas and Vioba the Meba Tasuna Chetas Wara, Cheba, Meba. Doctor Sudan Meba Yoba Rawachi, Takba Higa Rawachi Yoba Tawina, Tatas Wara. Taxi tiny that is the Umetawatella. Round to Truba Ganzu Sabanashe Yomare. Round to Truba Chawach engagement at the mayor was no Chawaching Cheba Mariore. Tension Devan Joan some Chawach of Shago, the Esigora. Umatenju Lula. To the Shanda in a round to a manner, Chawach of Shato Yomara. Umatenju Lula Tendamare. Shato with the Ese. Tension Debar Joaka, the machine, what they do what they do. Then I think you get check on by the Dani Rangwin, some Rawado, Trube Tongba Yimbe, Takbe Tata Sera. Rawandu Trube Tongba Sonza, Rawandu Truba Yine Takta Lundure. Rawine Trube Tawatele, Takta Lung Sigra. Meva Chiyoba Tagyora. Rawine Yebe Tombar Chachi Nebe Cheber Menjuarse. Rawandu Trube Chawa Chingedi Rawine Tongba Yenaya. Shenda Kanga Tenji Dene Lega Chetugyore, Chawa Chetugyore. Hote Sunda Cheba Mare, Meva Mare, Chawa Chetu Shagura. Cheban Menjuara. Rangi Dakshila Tene, Doje Getakba Samla Yobar John Nubandise, Rangi Dakshi Chashe Mambu Kora Mainge Chashe some Dakshi Mambu Tene, and Doje Getrata Dogbe Tanya Mingre Tani, Chawaching Mingre Tani, Shagba Tesamge, and it should that they charge and get the Yoba Shato Guadesura. Dakshila Tene, Doje Getakba Samla Yobar John Nubandise, or Tesam Yoba Shato Omatenyo Lula. No more to Yena Dakshila Tene, Doje Getakba Sambi Yotoma, Rangune Yogura, Rangune, Rangshingi Chawaching Yogurmado, and the Meva Shadow. Omatenyo Lula to the Marese. Tinika Shato Gresagara. Chabra Menjua Rangi Dakshila Tene, Doje Getakba Samla Yobar John Nubandi, Yebes, Omatenyo Lula Dibe. Dene Daksha Getani Dante, Ume Lam Yimbar Sonshis, or the Daksha Tani that Omatenjuage, Tawanjo to the Daksha Tani Dante, Ume Lam Res, Sogara. Yena. Tenju Mayimbe Chun Gaya Yoba Mayimbe, Tenjin Debra Joa Mayimbe Choyomare. Roa Mayimbe, Rangwine Yobe Tomba Dance. Rangwine Yobe Tomba Mayimbe Chun Gaya Yoba Mayinos. Tenjin Debra Joa Mayimbe Chun Gaya Yomare, Tesonda Rangwine Trube Tomba Mayimbe Chun Gaya Yoba Marese. Titsashina Song Shase, Sashi Long Tangiora. This is a long thing to translate. There's a neighbor in John Council. Chasheta, Dashi, Mambo, Chilatenje, Dogji, Tanya Latene, Tedan Delne, and it showed the Pashago Yora. There's a neighbor in John got 10 tomba in the Chatella, Rangune Trube Church, Yoma, Rangune Tomba. Karasa Koran Chasha Mambo Damada Mambo Koran Mange Mambuchi. Doji Tanya, Tezog and Tezulpa Mingchi Tashara. Tension Debra Juaga, Tenetomba, and you tell Rangwin Trubachi Yomara. Rangwin Trubachi Yona Koran Mange Chasha Latation Del Comare. Rangwin Trubachi Yona, Lupa, Luwang Pa Shagomare. Koranga de Yens, Me Rangwin Trubachi Yena, Messenger Rangwin Truba Yena. Zambuli Kanga, Messi Chipa Quad, Chipa Yumadua. Ming Madame Tagua. What just on the go, Tanya Giwangish, how the young girl matter. Tension Deborah and Juan got 10 Rangwin Tombare Sora. Tenitene Dana, Mare Western Mare Mares. Dashita Chashe Medra at the Zultane, Doji Tanya did the race by Ming Tasuna. That's some Lesha or a Yoba. Conjo de Lega Cheba de Chajan de Lega Cheba de Shaku Yora. Tenitene Dagbades. Can you ome laminos? Or the Kashambura dinner Sutanda Tuni Abushigwa. Tenzin Deborah and Joaka Sonza. Dashitan Dozilla Tenzin, Drelne, anything over the Pashagi Ora. The Shagi is a round to Trubayana Yomare. Rana Trubayana, Tanya Jiwang Shagomare, Kunangwang Tsuya Shora. Chashe to Zultegomare. To Supashana Kurana Rangetu with Yangara, yes, Shanda Kindawake Goma Kawabanashi, the Kagare Sora. The stage and Deborah John Hakase. Tenet Tongbani to show tell around the Trubayan Yomare. Rangwin Tongbade, Shevere. Rangwin Tomba Maina, 다시 차셔라 땡지 타녀지 왕게 샤고데 고마르 타녀지 왕게 샤고 마임바 코나요 그래 다시 차셔라 때문에 그제 데레스 코나 줘요 거라 티오 말에 대소다 땡지 레버 좋아이나 다 랑윈의 주베 동바 니레 티셰버레셔라 다나 매버레스나 매버레 도아스나 랑와도 주베 레가 챙게지 메도아 주고촌 라에 메도아 मैंने तो मैं रवसना तेने तेने दाग बादे तिन्यों में लाइना दक्षी छशे में तो लेगा चिंके तिजुल तेने दोजे की थाने की तो वे पाता ने तेज़म ये कुंजो रे चावा चिबा देखो चावा चिबा शावा दाते यो बा शागो रे से तेने दाग बा चामले यो बा शागो रे से तेने दाग बाला चावा ने चाची रोंगे यो चा छेबा में यो आरे तेजे देवर जुआगा तने तोंबा निर से तने तेने ताबा दे तने उमे लामे नोस उमा से ताचे के थाने दा चवे रवा छेबा लोने देयो मा ले जुमदे ता चावा छेबा ते शाथो मारे ताबा लोंबे न गाजो थोने से रवा दु टुबा ता रवा दु टुबा ता रवा दु टुबा ने रवा दु टुबा छाबे यु रवा दु टुबा ताये यु रवा दु टुबा तने समताना अने शेंजा ता छाता ता खोंडो ता गाजे दे तेजु दे दे योरा तेजु मैबा सोतो यो मारे ओ तेदु ते sonza kanji tenju mai be chenga yo ba mai bas ta tenje deba jo mai be che kan yo ma rangu ne tu ba yo ma tije tongba mai be chenga yo ba mai nos tenje deba jo ya na da shi dan do che la tenje tele tene te dan del ne jung go ba shi na rangu du tu ba de yung ma rangu ne tu yo ma de se wa ra tije tongba mai be chenga yo ba mai nos oh ya 네, 가서 가지 땡주 많이 배쳐가 요바 많이 봐 대체 동바 많이 배쳐가 요바 많이 어디 자와시럽게 농장기도 와. 야, 어디 칠라나. 맞아.
In this manner, dependently arisen phenomena are free of the extreme of permanence because they are devoid of independent existence or existence from their own side. So here, this kind of view of the middle way that is propounded by the Prasangika Madhyamaka school is free from these two extremes, from the kind of extreme of a kind of like a permanence or the extreme of annihilation, wherein you sort of denigrate the extent to which phenomena actually do exist. Sorry. So here, then again, like when we look at these dependently originated phenomena, things like computers and so forth that exist and the independence upon an aggregation of many collections and conditions, we can see that like they're able to function. We can actually kind of imagine these sorts of marvelous functions that computers are able to do these days, but they don't have a kind of existence in their own right from their own side, but rather it is only due to being dependently originated phenomena that they are that allows for functionality. And such a view then is free from the two extremes. So dependently arisen phenomena are free of the extreme of permanence because they are devoid of independent existence or existence from their own side. So again, the middle way is this kind of path that is free from the extremes of some kind of like mistaken understanding, like the idea that phenomena have some kind of autonomous existence that is objective from their own side. And so here, although phenomena don't have any kind of independent existence from their own side, though lacking any objective existence, they are not completely non-existent because they are capable of functioning. So even though there isn't some kind of inherent or independent existence of phenomena, we can still say like fire burns and planes fly, and these things are functional actually because they don't have any kind of inherent existence. If they were inherently existent, according to this system, they would not have any sort of functionality whatsoever. You couldn't speak of there being any kind of functionality. So though lacking any objective existence, they are not completely non-existent because they are capable of functioning. And one can posit that they exist as mere designations imputed by terms and concepts in dependence on their bases of imputation. So here, again, the kind of nihilist view, the falling into that sort of extreme of annihilation would be to denigrate the actual existence of things, to sort of undermine the way in which they do exist, like karma and so forth. And so the middle way, free from these extremes, is said to be this kind of understanding of existence as merely designated existence, imputation by terms and concepts, independence upon their bases of imputation. So this is said to be the middle way, or the middle path, free of the two extremes of permanence and annihilation. Therefore, since all phenomena are dependent arisings, they lack existence from their own side. So there isn't a single phenomena that is not a dependent arising, and therefore all phenomena lack that kind of objective existence or existence from their own side. So here, again, this is then backed up by this quotation from the Fundamental Verses on the Middle Way by Nagarjuna, where it says, whatever is dependently arisen, that is explained to be emptiness. So whatever is dependently arisen, as in it isn't existent from its own side with this kind of inherent existence, but rather is existent only in dependence upon imputing, mental imputation, giving a name. There's no sort of autonomous or independent existence from its own side. That is explained to be emptiness, and that being a dependent imputation is itself the middle way. So here, again, if it were the case that things were not merely imputed by terms and concepts, but had some kind of objective existence from their own side, then it would be the case that like everyone would call fire fire because that's how it exists. But we can see that that's not the way that it is. There are different names, different labels that are given in dependence upon those various things. But yet it's not that things are non-existent. They exist in a manner of being dependent imputations. So here, these verses from the Fundamental Verses on the Middle Way are a really good summation of this incredibly important point, that nothing has that kind of autonomous sort of self-existence, self-sufficiency from existence from its own side. If it exists, if phenomena existed in that way, independent of our imputation with terms and concepts, then the Prasangika Madhyamakas would assert that there would be no functionality. One would fall into this extreme of permanence, whereby you couldn't have any sort of functioning existence. And then on the other hand, if you're to deny, if you're to negate any sort of existence whatsoever, even their merely dependent existence, you would fall into that extreme of annihilation, where you deprecate those things that do exist, that merely dependently designated existence. So here, if you fall into the extreme, finishing this quotation, something that is not dependently arisen, such a thing does not exist. Therefore, a non-empty thing does not exist. So here, if one were to say, that there, like many of the lower philosophical schools, that there must be some kind of autonomous or intrinsic existence from the side of the object, then that would mean that those things couldn't sort of change. We couldn't increase or decrease those sorts of qualities because they wouldn't be dependent origination. So here, again, there's nothing that is not dependently designated in the sense of being dependent upon imputation through term and concept on a particular basis of designation. So there's nothing whatsoever that is not dependently arisen in that way. And therefore, Nagarjuna says, a non-empty thing does not exist.
Oh yeah. Dan do long jang ge do le jang se san je do na le song sha se. Kan de is ne ji den je tan je wang ge yin je. Dan dan ba ne ma yin no se. Shir je de ka song yo do. bomgine sora. Tian jiden je tanya je wangin je todamba minus. Chudu kanga yodan de chashe la tene ne le pa ta ne de chi yin se jiden ge tanya pa ta yo de o ti tanya ge wange yo ba re te sam ge yo ba sha go de se yin ba sha go de se wara jiden ge tanya ge wange yin je tan damba ne ma yin no tan damba truba temba truba yu rangwen ne truba rawan du truba chi yo ma de se tanya ge wange sha ba re lo tanya da dai tanya ni ba 되게 되는 다시 차세 대sol을 가야로 마부칠 때네 내가 명지 따요래 대왕하게 샤바티 잠기 여바 샤고래서 지단게 타냐 여왕게 이제 타냐 여왕게 샤바 마인베 유치 연안에 동담바 여바래 타냐 여왕게 샤메고 바 유코랑 거네 라와도 투바 라 도실레 때메고 바 딱실레 때메고 바 코랑 거네 다서바 제서바 진주주서 지여나 근데 또 담바리 여바래 랑원에 여바래 랑신기 여바래 랑게 뭐여 여바래 샤라 뜻은 될네 여바 말에 랑게 뭐여 여바래 진짜 여 말에 신지된지 타냐게 왕게 샤바래스 dakshi mendrawa mangbola tene jidenji mingre tagire tewangge shagwa tesamge yoba shagure ese tewangge shagwa maimbe yukorangune yoba chiona ane tantamba yoba rese tantamba yoba maino shida shigeben reba le janse loben dawa trawa shigeben reba nalya teacher oh yesha 시켜변 잡을래 자러와 뒤에서 간다 똑바 여바 코네 여바 니 당하시기도 시자 간다 쉬 간다 여바데 똑배 왕게 샤과레서 똑바 근지된게 전에 차셔를 때네 똑바 바 타냐시 따요래 대왕게 여바 샤바레서 와라 타냐 여왕게 여바래 강다 똑바 여바 코네 여바니다 시자 여마여세데 똑배 왕게 샤바텔 여바 샤고르 마도 랑문에 여마일 따요 말을 성거라 똑바 매바 여바니 매바 대다네서 똑배 왕게 차실을 때네 덕실을 때네 똑배 바 맹따바 타냐 따바 대왕게 여바시레 마도 시거라 똑배 왕게 똑바 여바 코네 여바 니 다시라 똑바 매바 여바 니 매바 똑배 왕게 샤바 마인바 여바시 요 말에서 똑바 매바 여바 니 마인바 대단에 고르마차 바르서 태좀 매바르시거라 고르마차 태좀 매바 고르마차 바르 탁발은 똑배 딱배 주다 탁바 차다라부터 되셔네 namshi nima sarabaru batendene tutu do samje jibachi gora raune tutu do samje jibachi gora yo mari de ko tuna wa gora teso takban do wala takbe tutar range ngo ma to bange sos marazo tonde takba chada tendelia sarabaru batende tutu do samje yung chi do samje ko she teacher do tende takban dogbala takbe tuda range ngo ma to bange range ngo to ba che yo ma re so ra tanya yoang ka pha sha ba ma do she som ba de che tam je rawa do to ba ma yin ba re range cha she da da shin do she le de ne to be den jun yin ba so sa da che kan de she na ya ro che tam je rawa do to ba me rangwe ne to ba me range ngo to ba me dan tam ba to ba me ro ma yin ba range cha she me ram ma yin be range cha she me da da do she ge tanye za da to be tanye le to ne to ba sha ko re ti to be tin jo re se cha she da do she le to ne to be tin jo yin ba to bo sia o de shi la That's why she said that.
So it is independence upon various kind of parts that on the particular basis of designation that we then designate with terms and concepts the existence of various things. So everything exists by the power of the world's conventions, not by ultimate existence. So here to elaborate on this, it then explains that sorry, so ultimately when we talk about something existing ultimately or being truly existent, this would refer to that being objectively existent from its own side without depending upon the designation through conventions, through concepts, but rather as opposed to that that kind of autonomous or independent existence. Everything exists only through the power of the world's conventions. It's existent merely through the power of designation or through the power of imputation. So for something to have a kind of existence that is not dependent upon designating terms, that is not dependent upon its basis of designation or those designating terms, would then be to have existence from its own side, a kind of objective existence. And that is something that everything is lacking. So here, continuing in this, Chandrakirti's commentary on the 400 stanzas by Aryadeva then states, therefore, everything exists only by conceptuality and cannot exist without it. So without that kind of labeling, mental imputation or imputation through terms and concepts, again, we give various labels or names to things, we designate them with words, but there's also the kind of imputation with concept. If there were some kind of thing that existed apart from that, not dependent upon that, it would be ultimately existent. They would be truly existent. But there is nothing that exists in that way. Without a doubt, everything lacks essential existence, just as a snake imputed on a coiled rope. So whatever it is, whatever phenomenon we're talking about, it only exists by way of imputation through terms and concepts. To exist like from its own side without giving something a name or labeling it, that is not the kind of existence that anything has. And we can liken this, we can use the example of like when you have the right kind of conditions, there's a rope and it's like a striped rope and it's coiled up and the weather or the lighting is just kind of right. You see that and you think snake and you give rise to fear and all the rest of that. Even though there is no such snake existent in that basis of designation, due to the process of designating it, we impute, oh, that's a snake, and everything arises from that. So here, thus, no phenomena exists independently. There's nothing that exists from its own side, independent of the process of this mental labeling, but rather all phenomena are established as arising in dependence on their parts, on their bases of imputation, and on imputed terms and concepts. So whatever phenomena exists, it exists in a way that doesn't have this kind of ultimate autonomous existence from its own side without being dependent upon the kind of basis of imputation as well as the imputed terms and concepts.
Oh yeah. 당한 전들이야. 댄진 대버를 중앙 마와서더라. 다 댄데레 스투다 마와랴. 가시기 최강가 댄진 대버를 중앙 레서노. 가시기 댄진 대버를 중앙 마레서로 댄데 대버담다 용거라. 대제 거르셔요라. 댄진 대버를 중앙 마와서 켈링게 쓰어라. 산제베 주다마와 남네스 남바 산제바 산제 좀 된대게 진주게 주다마와 시용 거라 지라마와 단도데바나 샘잠바 오마바 주다마와 시용 거와 산제베 주다마와 남네 뇌주지 뭐본 데남세 뇌진지대 가라주 대사근 잠불린데 세와라 주지 샘젠스네 tel라 long-term gain ganji kasa to la 聚精集天说了，内精集天的聚精集天集天你有了，你聚精集天因我不，你能说了，让个主当今年对吧？怎么了？担心这边的情况，马我先拉是，那么上这边主当马我西部的西个给，你聚精集天的刚个的说了，内精集天俺就带生咱不能的当，聚集身边。没到等住了，上班的是上班时候了，那你最近几天因为不，你能让给主当见，你礼拜怎么了？担心这边人就啊，马上人来是，主当见没手里讲过的人这个行动性呢，个主当见年龄给主当前期期间了点呢，你怕担心这边的情况的是开领过了。我听那些长毛女的聚集有点看得起呢，担心这边的情况的是提开领个的些的，那么上这边住的毛长毛的，是吧？上这边住的毛，那么的女婿跟酒店的那么，女婿跟酒店因为问题那么，让给住的跟礼拜咱们说的，他的可能我什么都等到这不是呢，年龄当年纪期间长的可。说过多，给过多，这怎么的呢？穷人嘛多，这就等于七八步了，说吧，现在大吧，七八步听着这不去出，学校吧听着嘛的说了，我让中国什么同代个，就当见的做了点呢，可穷的个了，我听着嘛话的是，就当见礼拜怎了，我说都同见礼拜怎么了，等见这边的讲啊，嘛话言拉是。先等把上节中点的马票光给，叫他跑过有了住的忙不要的，我这做个听着这里开领嘛的是，现在他们的担心这边的讲啊，嘛一弄是，那就打了些责任吧，担心这边的讲啊说的，有啊没被干了等的讲啊，没打把都没干了等的讲啊，是吧？你别干了等的讲啊是。就当写把了等的讲个生意，大部没被给了说，见送的见俺来讲啊写上，手里这边都告诉见送的见俺来讲啊，这见送的见俺来讲啊，等着这边讲啊，这南北走开了嘛都，七里八走的开了个嘛了，可是见送的见俺来讲啊，讲个等着嘛我的嘛意思过的，有啊没被给了等的讲啊是，行吧。就等于七八步了，说我听着有，没打把都没给了，等你说是，没打把给多么少你给我的是，你别给了，听不满意别就当给了，等你给我的是，送的对吧？俺晓得说你大部没别给了，等你说是了，就当七八了，等你说是了，这些老难丢钱呀。
So then turning to this next section, the proponents of dependent arising. So whereas proponents of Buddhist tenets assert that all composite things, both animate and inanimate, arise in dependence on merely their respective causes and conditions, the proponents of non-Buddhist tenets do not assert such dependent arising. So here again, there are those that assert this idea of dependent arising and those that don't. Generally, all Buddhists accept the idea of dependent arising, accept this concept. So the various tenet schools, the four Buddhist tenet schools, the Vaibhashikas, the Sautrantikas, the Chittamatran, and the Madhyamakas all accept that the environment, so the sort of inanimate, the world, the container kind of world, and those beings who are contained within it, all of the various types of beings, from humans and animals and hell beings, all of those are dependent arisings, that all composite things come from causes and conditions. So here, there are those who propound dependent arising, and non-Buddhist tenet holders do not assert such a dependent arising. And we see how they have various different assertions. And here, again, the Rice Seedling Sutra elaborates or sort of gives a description of how it is that dependent arising is characterized by these sorts of different characteristics of the cause. We could talk about sort of the three or the five, but here, this is really something that we can see for ourselves directly. essentially, that things arise in dependence upon an aggregation of causes and conditions. One needs to have a kind of substantial cause, as well as the coordinating conditions to bring about a various or a particular result. And so here, again, there are those that would assert that there's some kind of deity or a creator being or something like that. But here, the kind of dependent arising that is accepted by Buddhist schools is characterized by that there is production from a cause that is not a divine creator's thoughts, and two, that they assert production from multiple impermanent causes. You can't have permanent causes, and nothing arises from just one single cause. And then you need to have, thirdly, production from a cause that has the capacity to give rise to the effect. So there needs to be something that has the ability, the power to actually generate that particular effect, the substantial cause, as well as the kind of coordinating conditions. Now, those are the sort of three defining characteristics of dependent arising. But if we add two more, it's that those causes need to be selfless, not sort of established in their own right, or sort of have that kind of establishment, and causes that exist. We can't have something that arises from non-existent causes. So here we will continue with this, but Buddhist tenet holders assert and accept this idea of dependent arising that is characterized by either those three or those five sort of characteristics of the causes.
Oh yeah,
So we'll stop there for today as we are out of time.
oh yeah.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of wholesome's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the three worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Thank you, Ginla. Thank you very much.
Oh yeah.
Thank you, Katrina.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Just a reminder for people online, next week is our last teaching in this series, and to support the Abbey, such teachings available online. Have a look in the chat box for how to donate. Also, Geshe Topke will be giving teachings on the Diamond Cutter Sutra, sponsored by the Jewel Heart Learning Center in Ann Arbor. Those will be every Tuesday and Friday evening in April from 7 to 9 Eastern Time. And again, the link is in the chat box. We'll see you next Thursday morning.